In the year of our Lord 1212, or thereabouts, a boy of 15 named Stephen was tending sheep in France, not an especially uncommon event. He was approached by a man who said, "I come from a holy place." The man vanished, and Stephen believed him to be Christ. Stephen traveled to Paris and spent the next few weeks rabble-rousing the citizens with the slogan, "Innocence will prevail where knights have failed." This rallying cry is assuredly more rousing in French. Stephen knew in his heart of hearts that the Moslems would be converted by his humble example. He assembled a swelling number of followers, now over 10,000, outside of Paris and soon marching on Marseille to the south. Upon arrival, the assemblage of joyful, unarmed lads and spiritual young women camped outside the city. The city elders, fearing thievery, refused to grant them entrance. The crusade survived on charity and the goodness of bounty God provided from the countryside. Farms were stripped as cleanly as if struck by the locusts of biblical plague. At the coast near Marseille, Stephen thought surely that the righteousness of his force would part the sea. After a couple of weeks, disease and hunger spread through his followers, and still the sea had not opened. Salvation! Stephen was approached by a controller of a shipping company with business relations in Cyprus and Acre. Seemingly touched by their example, the merchant said, "I would gladly give your pilgrimage of children free passage to the Holy Land." Finally, another sign of God. Marseille's nobility was delighted to see them go. The children were loaded onto 7 ships, 2 of which wrecked en route, sinking and drowning all aboard. The other 5 arrived in Alexandria, in Egypt, where the girls were promptly carted away to brothels, and the males were bound and sold into slavery, destined to die in the copper mines of Sinai. A biblical end indeed. And so came to pass yet another in a series of crusades. Yet 150 years earlier, or thereabouts, the first great pilgrimage, only centuries later would they romantically be called crusades, undertook their mission of freeing the Holy Land of Muslim rule. They would not go unarmed, nor would they believe in humble example. They came to conquer, sanctioned and blessed in every action by papal decree, forgiven in advance of any sin they might or would commit. To them, their every ignoble action was the will of God. After that little interlude, as you can expect, I'm not going to play the Children's Crusade of Stephen. I will be going back to the start of the Crusades. It is November of 1095. This technically would be the Dark Ages, or just about the time when we were emerging from the Dark Ages in Europe and going into the Middle Ages. In 1095, there's a growing problem. The Knights of Christendom are warring with one another, and this is deadly for the peasants, and it's also hindering any burgeoning trade. Overall, it's just bad for the church, and it has to stop. Now, the Pope could appoint a new emperor to take over in the West, but the last one started to think himself as divine and above all the laws. Quite conveniently, in 1095, ambassadors are arriving from Constantinople. If you know any of your history, the Roman Empire divided into the Western Roman Empire, which eventually fell, and the Eastern Roman Empire, which continued to thrive. And their capital, Constantinople, is where the Emperor Alexius lives. He has sent ambassadors to Rome to talk about the horrors that are being experienced by Christians of the East at the hands of Muslim Turks. Now, Emperor Alexius is mostly just asking for help to prevent raiding and conquest of certain territories in Asia Minor, modern-day Turkey. Pope Urban presides over a Council of Clermont and calls into being the First Crusade. He sends Frankish ruffians to the east, all the people that are warring, mostly landless knights, because the Franks live under a doctrine of primogeniture, where only the firstborn son inherits land. Everyone else that's born sons of the family has to pick up a life either in the church or in thievery and banditry under the legal name of being an unlanded knight. He tells his Frankish host that they need to go to the east and capture the riches and send back tithes from that storied place. Go to the Holy Lands, for God wills it. God wills it, a rallying cry that's been used by almost every army since the adoption of Constantine of Catholicism. I will be playing Peter, and I am a soldier, a man of justice, and I will be using the rules of Quintessential Paladin here. You can see Peter the Hermit. I put my little icon here into the game. And all characters are destined, which means I gain +1 to my dice rolls to start. As a justice man, I am very good at tests of power, which means I will roll 2 dice. Let me give you an example of that. I also want to make sure my dice are working. And I rolled 2 dice for a 9, but it's not the total I'm looking at. I rolled a dice of a 3 and a dice of a 6, and I would take the better of the 2, and I did something mighty on my test of power. I wasted that nice 6. I defeated all fell ones, or a dark knight, or I circumvented a scourge. And I will be describing the obstacles in the game as I undergo this crusade along the historic route of the First Crusade, sometimes called the Children's Crusade. As I face an encounter, I will label it as a fell one, a dark knight, or I will circumvent a scourge. I could also be required to make critical insights and critical deeds, or solve a critical problem, which is a combination of critical insights and deeds. The second page of 2-page roleplay of Quintessential Roleplay, I have tables here, which I will decide at each encounter whether I will treat this as the pious part of the quest or kingly deliberations, and will save that climactic ending, assuming I make it all the way to Jerusalem and the siege there, as the First Crusade did, spoiler, or if I die along the way. Now, I chose Quintessential Paladin as my game system because it's actually pretty easy. If there's anything close to a god mode of roleplay games, it's probably a Quintessential Paladin. Besides the fact that it's very tough to actually see a result that I die, I sort of will fade from tests of power to righteous rewards to do something, anything, by the tables telling me that going forward I will only use certain tables. But those are very rare when I'm rolling 2 dice, and even until I lose that destined status, I'm adding 1 to each roll. So that 3 and 6 was actually a 4 and a 7. I also get this plot armor, and I'm going to apply this plot armor as part of my episodes. In each event, I'm going to try to get through 4 or 5 obstacles in each episode, and I will apply plot armor in each of those episodes. So I have the ability to change class and take a roll elsewhere. I can automatically say in this episode, I will pass a Scourge, critical insight, critical deed, or I can ignore this do something, anything, roll of a 1, and where I would be slain and the episodes would end. And as common in my playing, I will also add soak-offs, NPC characters that I can use to nullify rolls in this case, or give me an extra do-over mulligan.